Less burnout, more babies.
If you're not encouraging your children to grow up and have the courage to get married and have kids, more kids than they can afford before they think they're ready, it is high time to start.
This cyclical, life-giving nature of women.
I do believe that Christians are called to have kids. I don't really believe that there is a biblical excuse not to have children other than you cannot have children.
And if more women were told and more young girls were told that a husband and children make your life so much better, they would do it younger.
Go raise a family. Go build a life of holy defiance. Go love your husband. Go love your babies. Go teach your children how to blaze a trail of glory.
Let's get right to the point. Conservative influencers are liars. Their promotion of traditional femininity, biological destiny, traditional gender roles, mandatory motherhood, God-given identity, it's all a grift. It's a performance. They promote a lifestyle that they themselves do not follow. They say that men should be the providers and women should prioritize pregnancy and childbearing above all else. But often they're the primary breadwinners and they focus heavily on their careers. They act like they're the perfect stay-at-home moms who don't depend on childcare. They pretend that they cook all their meals from scratch and take on the brunt of the domestic labor, but it's not the reality. They are high-powered, career-driven women who are cosplaying as stay-at-home moms. Their definition of traditional family values means subscribing to traditional gender roles. They will tell people that men should be the providers and women should be subservient and obey their husbands. And even if they aren't that explicit about the patriarchal language, they still believe in those roles. So let's go through some of these influencers and I will show you exactly what I mean. Let's start with Alex Clark, who hosts the popular podcast Culture Apothecary. She talks about wellness and health and a whole bunch of pseudoscience. She focuses on all the key conservative topics like how birth control is bad for you and seed oils are terrible and, is anti-big pharma and super MAGA. She famously said at a conservative conference,
Less burnout, more babies.
So it's obvious that she also subscribes to this idea that we have a fertility crisis and that people need to be having more babies, right? The thing is, she's 33 years old, she's still single, and she's childless. She is a prime example of the women that she rails against. Women who waste their 20s by not having children.
No kids and I'm not married yet. Want to be desperately. I would have gotten married at 19 years old, if I would have met the right person. Totally. It just hasn't happened yet.
She also says stuff about how women have gotten too educated, too smart, and that's why men aren't interested.
Women, we're creating this problem ourselves with having too high standards. Honestly, this is going to be a hot take to say, and this is going to rub people the wrong way, but we've gotten too educated. We've climbed the ladder too much at work. We're elevating ourselves to such a level as women that it is impossible for the men to catch up. And so because of that, nobody wants to marry us.
Babe, I don't know what you're talking about. Liberal women are educated and smart, and we're married, and we have children. It's a you problem. It's a conservative problem. The idea that conservative men are not interested in women because they're too smart or too educated is crazy. That's a problem.
Accusing MAGA, the Make America Healthy Again movement, of wanting to put women back in the kitchen. You know what? Hell yeah.
All right, next let's talk about Erika Kirk, who obviously believes that people should be having more babies before they're ready because that is something that her husband, Charlie, always promoted.
Feminism is the glaring thing in front of us where we have fertility rates down, we have marriage rates down, we have unhappiness up, and we did something in the 1960s out of the universities of Bretty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists that basically said you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control, and all of a sudden women are way unhappier than they were 40 years ago. And I just have to ask the question, why is that? Is it working? And maybe there are biological differences between men and women that we should respect, and that deep down a lot of women want to get married and have children. In fact, we should applaud it and we should support it, and we should say it means nothing if you're going to go be a CEO of some shoe company or be some banker in London. What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down.
When he was still alive, Charlie Kirk would talk about how Erika was even more conservative than he was, especially when it came to gender roles. So you have to believe that she was on board with all of the things that he would say about how women are biologically designed to have children.
Let them stare at you. Let them write the meanest Instagram comments. Let them wonder, let them whisper. And while they're doing all of that, because that's just noise, build your family. Go raise a family. Go build a life of holy defiance. Go love your husband. Go love your babies. Go teach your children how to blaze a trail of glory. Go lead in truth and go be the light.
The other thing is that Charlie Kirk would regularly go to college campuses and tell young women that they should get their MRS degree. He would regularly advocate for women not getting their education in order to start families.
For example, we want to reverse the fertility crisis in the West. We are increasingly having less children, and we have a population collapse that is plaguing our entire society. People need to get married more and have children younger and have a lot more children in this country. We want to see that reverse.
But the thing is, Erika Kirk has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and she was working toward her doctorate. She also was CEO of 2 companies, a clothing company and a ministry project, before she became CEO of TPUSA.
Well, I didn't ask for this. Obviously it's a blessing that I view it as a blessing. It's a duty to my husband. But I was very happy being a stay-at-home mom. There's nothing wrong with being a mother. There's actually more beautiful and emotional and powerful job title, if you will, being a mother.
Oh, and that's not all. She was also a licensed real estate agent in New York City. She was 33 when she married Charlie Kirk, 34 when they had their first baby, and 36 when they had their second kid. So once again, here's what you should do, but I'm an exception to the rule because I'm just better than you. They won't say it outright, but that's really what they're saying.
Women, I have a challenge for you too. Be virtuous. Our strength is found in God's design for our role. We are the guardians. We are the encouragers. We are the preservers. Guard your heart. Everything you do flows from it. And if you're a mother, please recognize that is the single most important ministry you have.
We have Katie Miller, who is married to the scariest man in this administration, Stephen Miller. Katie Miller is, you guessed it, a podcast host. She runs the Katie Miller podcast, and it is so boring.
Hi, I'm Katie Miller. Welcome to my podcast and welcome to my living room. You may be wondering what I'm doing here hosting a podcast. It seems these days, just about everyone has a podcast. For years, I've watched from the sidelines as people I know, people I respect, have hosted TV shows, radio shows, podcasts, you name it. And I thought, hey, I could do that too.
And despite having really big guests like RFK Jr. and JD Vance, it has terrible numbers. Like, people are just not watching this podcast because it's not interesting. Katie Miller loves to post unhinged things on Twitter and Threads, things like, our biological destiny is to have babies. The funniest thing about this one to me is that she said, for the first time ever, birth rates for women in their late 30s have surpassed those in their early 20s. She didn't have her first child until 29, and she's currently pregnant with her 4th at age 34. So she's contributing to the low birth rates for women in their early 20s, the same birth rate that she's actively complaining about. She also posted this one.
I'm a strong believer in that, like, when feminism started increasing in our country, so did the decline in the birth rate, because as they told women, you need to be equal to a man, you need to go to a workplace. Women stopped having babies because they thought that's what they needed to do, is have this career that served, and the career ladder is how they were going to become equal to that of a man. And it's like, when women lost their femininity and said having a baby and having a family is the most beautiful thing I can do as a contributor to this society. Doesn't matter how much I make, it doesn't matter how much I earn or what my job title is. Being a mother is the preeminent role. And when society told women that that wasn't it anymore, is when you started having weak men.
Katie Miller has been very outspoken about the problem of the fertility crisis and saying that teen birth rates falling is a bad thing, which implies that she thinks women should be having babies when they are teenagers, like 18, 19, not getting an education, just starting a family. And I'm pretty sure she has basically said that. The thing is, she has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. She worked as Mike Pence's press secretary and then his communications director when he was vice president. And she is currently a working mom. We obviously can't have this conversation without talking about Isabel Brown, who went viral at CPAC this year for saying that people should have more babies before they're ready to have them.
If you're not encouraging your children to grow up and have the courage to get married and have kids, more kids than they can afford before they think they're ready, it is high time to start.
Once again, talking about the fertility crisis and telling women that they should prioritize families over careers, but she has a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences and a master's in biomedical sciences policy and advocacy. She has written 2 books. She works full-time as an influencer and a speaker and an author, and she had her first baby at 27. So once again, she's not helping contribute to the low birth rate of women in their early 20s. Now, I will say that Isabel Brown does say that women should prioritize motherhood, but she also has never claimed to be a trad wife, has outwardly said that she is a working mom and is proud of that. So I guess she gets like this much credit. Okay, now we're going to talk about Casey Means, who is a wellness influencer and former nominee for Surgeon General. She is not going to be Surgeon General. She has outwardly criticized birth control, has spoken about the fertility crisis, said something along the lines of like, women have a life-giving nature. Here, let's watch.
The hormones in the female body that create this cyclical life-giving nature of women. We basically told women these hormones don't matter. Your ability to create the most miracle of any miracles, which is create life, just shut it down. There's no impacts. Your cycle and having these hormonal cycles is part and parcel with our health in every possible way, and also with the miracle of creating life.
So once again, this is that messaging that there's like a biological imperative for women to get pregnant and have babies, that it's our feminine nature to bear children. But once again, she is a very career-centered person. She has a bachelor's degree and an MD from Stanford, and she almost completed a surgical residency at Oregon Health Sciences University. She also founded a health tech company, a functional medical practice, and wellness consulting business. She wrote a book, and she is an influencer. She is regularly a guest on a variety of podcasts and TV shows. And yet, for someone who talks about the miracle of creating life and like biological destiny, she didn't have her first child until 38, which was just this past year. All right, now we're moving on to Allie Beth Stuckey, who is, again, a podcaster, a conservative influencer. She talks a lot about biblical womanhood and really bases her content in Christianity and her view of Christianity. She said there's no biblical excuse to not have children.
Is there a certain number of kids that Christians are supposed to have? We are told in the beginning to be fruitful and multiply. There could be a number of reasons why you may not have children, but if you can have children and if you are married, I do believe that Christians are called to have kids. I don't really believe that there is a biblical excuse not to have children other than you cannot have children for some reason. Now, there could be some exceptions to that. I believe if you have a concentrated mission effort that God has specifically called you to, and so for a period of time, it is being responsible or good stewards to not multiply, just wanting to be quote unquote child free, wanting to pursue a career instead of having children, wanting to travel instead of having children, being scared of what the future holds, being worried about the way that the world is going. Those are not biblical reasons not to have children.
And she talks a lot about like traditional biblical gender roles. Despite that, she hosts and produces a podcast 3 to 4 days a week. She's regularly a guest on Fox News and other podcasts and other TV shows. Yes, that's a trend with all of these women. That's their whole career, is just like going on one another's podcasts and shows.
What I love about you, besides all the public work that you do, is that you're also a devoted Christian. You're a devoted mom. You're a devoted wife. I'll just say your baby and your very sweet husband and your adorable baby are over in the other room.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about like managing our lives before we started the podcast and how this all goes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to just hear like, how do you do what you do?
And I'd love to hear that from
you
you
produce
too.
a show 4 days a week. Yeah. And you produce it. Like you have a team, but you are, it's not like someone's giving you a script.
Right.
And you have 1,000 episodes, right? Of Relatable.
Almost 1,000 episodes.
I'm only at like almost 100, and it's a lot.
It
is
is
like a lot.
It is a lot. And even I have an awesome team, and I have a producer, and I'm so thankful for them, and I have help with research. That hasn't always been the case, though.
And the other really interesting thing about Allie Beth Stuckey is that she promotes these gender roles, right? Like that men should be the provider and women should be the child bearer and child rearer. And yet she really is the breadwinner of her family because her husband supports her career. She is the one with the influence and with the power. And her husband is her business manager. He does the administrative tasks. So they do kind of have flipped gender roles, at least as far as work goes.
I'm so incredibly thankful that I have a job that allows me to have the flexibility that I do. I am so thankful for the setup that we have in our home. And I always hesitate because I don't want it to seem like, well, I have to give an account to these random men on the internet exactly how we run our home and exactly what my schedule is, exactly what my day-to-day looks like. I feel no obligation to do that at all. But a lot of you know, I've talked about this publicly, that my husband, Chief Relatable, is my business manager. We work together full time. He makes decisions on our behalf. He runs all of the business part of everything. And I'm so thankful that when it comes to this professional sphere, that all I have to worry about is the discipleship. All I have to worry about is the content of what I say. I love dreaming. I love thinking. I love coming up with ideas. I love talking, teaching, communicating with you, mentoring you, talking with you. And he runs and leads and organizes and manages all of the business side of everything we do. And I'm so thankful for that.
Next up is Riley Gaines, who, of all of the people that I'm talking about in this video, is the only one to have a child before age 25. And she had her first child at 25, which, for the record, is not early 20s anymore. It is straight smack dab in the middle of mid-20s, right? 25. And yet she's still the youngest to have had a child. So again, not contributing to the having a child in your early 20s data set. Let me read you a quote from an article about her in The Conservateur, which is, I don't know, some conservative magazine. She said, "I think this next generation is going to save America. The other side isn't having kids. They're sterilizing themselves or in relationships where conception won't happen." By that she means like LGBTQ relationships. "Strong households with nuclear families are reproducing. That's how you shift the culture, by having kids and instilling values." She also later in the article said, "We will out-baby them," referring to how conservatives are going to have more kids than liberals, and that's how they're going to win the culture war. I haven't seen her talk that much about traditional gender roles, but she is so openly and outspokenly anti-trans that it is pretty clear that she believes in traditional gender roles and traditional gender presentation.
I don't think there's anything more rewarding or fulfilling or purposeful that you can experience, if you can experience it, as a woman than being a mom.
Do you think that modern birth sometimes over-medicalizes something that women are biologically designed to do?
Yes. It was the whole process I had from the beginning to the end. I think the only way I can describe it was natural.
And like all these other women, she also works. She has The Riley Gaines Show, yet another podcast. She is a very active influencer on Instagram and on TikTok, and she also goes on mainstream television to do interviews, to talk about how mad she is years later that she tied for 5th place with a trans swimmer. Girls, 5th place. It's not like you were gonna win. She is an avid Trump supporter, and one of the most hypocritical things she said recently was going on TikTok to talk about how she's still getting hospital bills and there's no transparency. She had her daughter like 8 months ago and she's still getting bills in the mail, which is so normal in the US. And they aren't necessarily itemized, or if they are, they're confusing. And she went online to talk about that. And people were quick to call her out on the fact that she voted for this, right? Like, yes, this has always been a problem and will always be a problem unless we somehow shift to a different model of healthcare, like universal healthcare. But it's important to note that she voted for Trump, who gutted the Center for Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight, which was the federal office in charge of implementing the No Surprises Act, which was all about transparency in billing. The other thing that she has been hypocritically complaining about nonstop is that her husband is not a US citizen. He is from Europe. And she's talked a lot about his challenges with the citizenship process, even though she supports strict immigration policies. She even went so far as to say that her husband is more American than people who were born here because he likes ICE. Because apparently, to Riley, that's what makes you American. Supporting immigrations and customs enforcement. All right, next up is Karoline Leavitt. And I wouldn't necessarily call her an influencer, but she obviously has a lot of influence as the press secretary. She's not press secretary right now. She's about to have her second child any day, but that is her role in this administration. For someone who pushes family values so hard and pushes the conservative Christian nationalist agenda of this administration, it feels pretty ridiculous that she got pregnant out of wedlock with a boyfriend who, now her husband, who is 32 years older than her. She got engaged at 26, then had her baby 7 months later, so clearly she was pregnant before they got engaged. And then they got married after having their son. She went back to work 1 week after having her first baby. And while that is deeply American, it also goes directly against what so many of these women believe, which is that women should be home and taking care of the family and a baby needs their mother. Okay, but Karoline, who's taking care of your baby when you are back in the office 1 week after giving birth, still bleeding? She is working a high-stress, full-time job, so either her geriatric husband is watching their son alone, which seems unlikely, or they have full-time childcare. The final person I want to talk about is not an influencer per se, but maybe has the most influence of any of these people, and that is Usha Vance, who is JD Vance's wife. She is the second lady of the United States. Now, she really hasn't ever spoken much about her views on any of this, but JD Vance has been very open about what he thinks. We all know he had the childless cat lady comment. He's talked about how other members of the government like AOC and Pete Buttigieg don't have a stake in America's future because they don't have children. Also, that was a few years ago. Pete Buttigieg does have children now. He regularly complains about the fertility crisis. He talks about how women need to have more babies at younger ages. Let me read you a few of his quotes. He said, "Our people aren't having enough children to replace themselves. That should bother us." He continued, "We want babies not just because they are economically useful." The fact that he said not just because they are economically useful really gives insight into his view on this, because he's saying that that is basically the primary reason to have kids, is because they are economically useful to the country. Then he said, "We want more babies because children are good, and we believe children are good because we are not sociopaths." So again, calling people who don't want children sociopaths. Another time he said,
So let me say very simply, I want more babies in the United States of America. I want more happy children in our country. And I want beautiful young men and women who are eager to welcome them into the world and eager to raise them.
Again, the focus on age, young men and women. And then finally, he said, "To our fellow Americans, we say, you're never going to find great meaning in a cubicle or in front of a computer screen, but you will find great meaning if you dedicate yourself to the creation and sustenance of human life." He's positioning this as though it's to all fellow Americans, but really this message is targeted at women. Now, Usha Vance has really not spoken about, well, anything. She definitely hasn't contributed to this conversation either. The thing is that JD Vance says he wants all of these things. He wants a higher birth rate. He wants to fix the fertility crisis, all of that. He wants women to focus less on their careers and more on their families and have kids younger. But Usha Vance, his wife, has a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a JD. She was a very successful lawyer before she resigned in 2024, basically at the exact same time that JD Vance was announced as the VP candidate. She married JD Vance at 28. She was 31 when they had their first kid. She's now pregnant with their fourth child. All the way through her first 3 children's infancy and toddlerhood and early childhood, she was a working mom. She was very career driven and really probably would have stayed very career driven if JD Vance were not selected to be the VP candidate. We could go into the other hypocrisies about JD Vance and Usha Vance because, as you'll notice, Usha is the only non-white woman on this list. And what JD Vance really wants is for the country to have more white babies. That's the fertility crisis they're talking about, is that there aren't enough white babies being born. It all goes into their great replacement theory, white nationalism, all of that. And there are all sorts of people who speculate like, oh, but Usha doesn't stand for that. Oh, she's like quietly trying to be more progressive. No, she's not. No, she is not. What she is a career-focused working parent who, like all of these women, wants the country to do as they say and not as they do. They are exceptions to the rule. They want rules for thee, but not for me. And that is why their entire ethos is a lie. They are hypocrites to the highest degree. They do not practice what they preach. All they care about is pushing an agenda. Okay, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. I'm Ileana if you're new here. I talk about the intersection of politics and parenting. I'm on all social media as @IleanaJustine. I would love to have you follow me. Please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. I want to know your thoughts on this issue. And I will see you in the next video soon. Bye.